We're going to divide this section into three parts. The first part is going to be purchase order. The second part is going to be receiving the goods. And the third part is going to be receiving the invoice. And along the way, since we are going to look at the SAP GUI for the first time, we'll take a couple of detours and understand the different aspects of the SAP GUI. Let's get started. So first part, create a purchase order. How do you create a purchase order? In order to do a transaction in SAP, SAP GUI provides us a huge menu path. This is called the menu. And it's hierarchical. For example, this section deals with logistics, and under logistics you'll have materials management, sales and distribution, warehouse management, so on and so forth. And then there will be a section for finance. There will be a section for office related tasks. So it's a hierarchical menu. If you take MM or material management, it's under logistics, and under material management you'll have a ton of other hierarchical structures like purchasing, inventory management, so on and so forth. Let me show that to you. So this is what I was talking about. You have logistics, and underneath that you have material management, sales and distribution, production, plant maintenance, so on. Under material management you have purchasing, inventory management, invoice verification, physical inventory valuation, so on and so forth. To create a purchase order, the menu would be under purchasing, purchase order, and then create. Click on vendor supplying plant known. Just double click it. This is how you see it when you click on the transaction for the first time. You don't need this. This is all for information. Just close this. Most of the screen looks like a blank screen right now, but don't worry, we're gonna fill it up. The first task that we're gonna do is to select a vendor. We have to select a vendor to create a purchase order. How do you select a vendor? To select the vendor, there is a little drop down here that you can use to search for the vendor. Let me show it here. If you place your cursor on the vendor field, this little pop-up opens up. And then click on that set of squares and you see a pop-up. Now, I'm showing this pop-up in full screen, but depending on your screen's resolution, it could show itself differently. What is the search criteria we want to use to select the vendor? We know this vendor is in Chicago, so we're going to use the city of Chicago as search criteria. So type in Chicago, and when you hit on the green check mark, you're asking the system to search for all the vendors residing in the city of Chicago. And these are the set of vendors residing in the city of Chicago, right? So Cigna PPO, Fidelity 401k Services, Merrill Lynch, Cigna, so on and so forth. So this is called the vendor listing. You have used a particular search criteria called city equals Chicago and search for all the vendors in that city. Now I've selected a vendor, say 1222, and then did nothing. Say, where is 1222? Here is our 1222. Just double click that, and then it gets itself placed in the vendor field, and then do nothing. What happens? Nothing happens, right? But if I hit enter or hit on this green check mark, then the system pulls the information against the vendor 1222. As you can see, it says now that it's ABC Supply Company. That was not how the screen was previously, right? So it pulled the information on the vendor as soon as you hit enter or the green check mark. That shows us something. Whenever you enter something on the screen, the system would not validate it right away, because we are looking at a client server architecture. This is the GUI. Think of something that you do on the browser, like a Gmail or something. Whatever you do might not be validated immediately. So unless you hit enter or click a button like send or something, that's when the browser reaches out to the server and validates certain data. Hitting enter or hitting the check mark are equivalent. Both are the same. When in doubt, always hit enter. Then you see this message here called enter purchase org, and you see that the color of it is red. What does it signify? What it means, this is a hard error and you can't proceed forward. Meaning, you hit enter, you try to enter something else, it doesn't let you. It's a hard error. So whenever you see an error, you have to address it first before you move forward. In this case, the system is asking you to enter purchase org data. Don't worry about what purchase org data is. Just enter purchase org data, purchase group and company code, and we can proceed forward. So we're going to enter 3000. We can enter any purchase group. If you don't know, you can just go here to search help. You know the double squares, right? Select that and select any purchase group. Select the company code of 3000 and hit enter. So we have entered our purchase org and purchase group, and the entire header has been filled up for you. What do I mean by the header? It's this section, the one that is highlighted in the blue box. It contains a set of tabs like delivery invoice, conditions, text, address. So when I said the header is filled up, you might have a question. Is it really filled up? Because you only see the org data tab. Just go to the rest of the tabs. Click on each of the tab. Delivery invoice. You see the data like net payment terms is filled up. Incur terms is filled up. Currency is filled up. Go to conditions. or texts, the data is all filled up for you. Why? Because you have entered the vendor and purchase order data. Okay, so where do you think it got the address from? For example, the 100 North Avenue 60606. That's the address of the vendor. So you have selected a vendor 1222 ABC Supply Company. As soon as you have entered the vendor and entered the purchase order data, SAP has already pulled the data for you into each of the respective tabs. So the header data is ready for you now. So when you create a purchase order, the first thing that you do is to enter a vendor, enter purchase order data, and your header data is ready. And then we have these sections that you can use to expand and collapse different sections of the purchase order. How many sections do we have? We have 3 sections. One is the header, second is the line item, and the third is the line item details. We'll see it in a moment. So these are the collapsible sections that I was talking about. For example, you can collapse the entire header by clicking on this button. You can collapse the entire header, right? And you can expand the item overview. Like I said, there are 3 sections, right? The header section, item overview, and item details. Now you can open the item details by clicking on this button. And if you want to get the header out of the way, just click on this and the header will just be collapsed, and you will have the entire grid of line items for you to enter nice and clean. Right? So this is the grid I was talking about, line items grid. Because you have collapsed the header, it's out of the way. But it's still there, just hidden from your view. Once your header is done, we start to enter line items. When I mean line items, these are materials that you need from that vendor. What do we need? We are a coffee shop, right? We need flour, we need sugar, that kind of stuff. This is where you enter a material, or your materials or products that we are talking about typically have a code. It's called a material master. We'll talk about material master later, but for now, let's just see if we have a material called flour. Again, what do? We go and use search help for that. Go there and type in star flour. Star. Why are we using the stars? The stars are being used because we don't know how the material is called. Is it wheat flour? Is it flour and then white, or is it what combinations of words are used with the word flour? So that's the reason why we use star flour star. Star is like a wildcard operator in SAP. Whenever you want to search for something, star is your wildcard operator. What it means in this case is search for everything that has the word flour in it in any possible combination. Again, use the green check mark or hit enter to let SAP search. See, these are the words that I was talking about. We have corn flour, we have wheat flour, we have enriched flour, we have flour, comma, whole grain, hard wheat flour. Point being, flour, the word flour could come in any possible combination. Let's go and select just the flour, BP401. That is the code that's given by somebody who has created this material master. Okay, again, I'm using the word material master. Don't worry about it. We'll get to it in the later chapters. So double click BP401 and then hit enter. Okay, now it's asking you to enter a plant. So what is a plant? A plant is a place where goods are manufactured. Like, so this is your coffee shop, right? This is your coffee shop, and each coffee shop could be associated with one or more plants. Why do you need a plant for a coffee store? So you don't just sell coffee, right? You sell some pastry, you sell some bread maybe, or you sell some stuff, right, along with your coffee. Imagine your Starbucks coffee store. You know, apart from coffee is just some of the things that they sell. Where are the rest of the things manufactured? They're manufactured in a plant, a factory. It makes your candy, it makes your pastry, all the kind of good stuff, right? So you can go ahead and enter a plant here. Again, you can use the search help and enter your plant. Like, for example, I want to enter the Chicago plant, 3100, right? Just double click it and hit enter. Right? What is the next thing that you have to enter? It says net price must be greater than 0. So it's asking you to enter a price. And go there and put $4, $5 per kilo, whatever the price is, right? And hit enter. Right? And the next thing is to enter a quantity. Okay, we enter a quantity of say 100 kilos. So what are we doing here? We're asking the system to create a purchase order with this vendor, ABC Supply Company in Chicago. For what? For flour in 100 quantity at a price of $4 per kilo, right? Oh, by the way, if I did not enter this, right? If I did not enter this, hit enter, you'll see that it's asking me to enter a quantity, right? This on the header or on the toolbar is where all these messages that the system is throwing are accumulated. So if you look at that, there were so many different messages that the system was throwing, right? So it says vendor not found, or enter a price, or enter a plant. These are all the different messages that the system is throwing at you. It's just saying, I need this information to proceed forward, right? That's how the program of purchase order is written. If you want to look at the list of error messages at any point, you can just click on this button in the PO header and you'll see all the messages, right? Right now we have entered everything, and everything is clean, and this button is gone here, right? That messages button is gone. Whenever you see that messages button, this button, that just means that there is something pending for you to enter in order for the purchase order screen to proceed forward. Right? Then there are different kinds of messages that get thrown at you. So in this case, anything with a red is typically an error message, right? And you know that by the type of the message. E stands for error, right? And another word of caution, sometimes you might not know where to enter a plant, because plant is, for example, on this screen you don't see plant, right? You get material, you got quantity, you got unit of measure, kilos or whatever, you got the price, but where is plant? Plant is a little bit out to the right, so just use the scroll bar to scroll to the right, and there you have the plant. Just in case you don't know where the plant is, or you don't know where certain fields are at the line item level, remember there is a scroll bar that you can use to scroll right and left and then figure out where your particular field is. Right? So we have selected a plant 3100 for Chicago. There are many plants, we've just selected one plant. And then we have entered a quantity 10 kilos, 100 kilos, right? We have also entered a price of $4 per kilo. Sometimes this could be pulled in automatically. I'll show you examples of when it will be pulled in automatically. But for now, we are entering a price. Now, why do we need to enter this price? Now, quantity anybody can understand. We need this quantity. But why do we need to enter a price? The price is the expected price that we have negotiated with this vendor already. You don't just create this purchase order with the vendor just like that, right? You would have already called them, or you might already have their price list. So you know what the expected price of flour is from this particular vendor. In this case, it's $4 per kilo. When there are no more errors, this button is gone, and then you have a clean toolbar and a clean header and line items. That means that there are no more errors. You can go ahead and save it. And what happens when you save it? Let's see. Save it. And the system takes a moment to create the purchase order for you. And after it creates the purchase order, it's going to give you a unique purchase order number. Think of it like the order number that you get when you place an order on Amazon. Whenever you place an order on Amazon, you get a unique purchase order number, right? That's unique across Amazon, meaning I won't get the same number as you. So it's unique across all Amazon's orders. So this number 45000171775 is a unique purchase order number the system has generated for this document or this purchase order. When you create an order on Amazon, you see the order number instantly, right? It's the same as that. But we have to get this purchase order over to the vendor, right? How do we do that? Let's see. Now, first thing is you need to have a copy of the purchase order. You can't just send the order number, right? He wouldn't know heads or tails of it. The order number also needs to have the line items, meaning what we have ordered, in what quantity, what is the price, so many other details that go into it. You could take a PDF of it, use email. You could just use a phone and then call in to the vendor and give him the order details, or you could fax it. There are different ways in which you could send this to the vendor. The first thing is, let's do a print of the PO, right? That's the easiest way and the most conventional way to do it. How do you do that? You gotta first go and open the PO to see a preview of it. And how do you do that? You go back. So this is the purchase order screen. If you want to create more purchase orders, you can just put in a vendor again, a different vendor, same vendor, and you could put different materials, so on, and create more purchase orders. But we are done with creating purchase order for now. So we're gonna go back and go to change, double click on change, and you see the system by default opens up the last created purchase order, the one that has been created most recently by you. Many people could be creating it in the same system. When you open the purchase order in change mode, it pulls up the last created purchase order by you. And here you can do a preview of how this purchase order is going to look like when you print it. How do you do that? You click on this button, print preview. Click on that and it will show you a preview of how this purchase order is going to look like when you print it. Alright, so this is how the purchase order is going to look like. You see, it's got an address, it's got our delivery address, it's got the line items that you've entered, the quantities, the prices, the purchase order number, all that good stuff, right? So you open the purchase order and clicked on print preview, this button, and you see the print preview of the purchase order, right? This is just the print preview. If you want to actually print it, it's not from here, it's from a separate transaction. The reason why it's done is because there should be a log of printing a purchase order. So that's why it's a separate transaction that has the flexibility of running in online mode or in batch mode. So you go back, and click on messages right under the purchase order section. So if you look at the purchase order, I opened it, and underneath that you have messages. You open that up, and this is where you print the purchase order. Double click that, and of course your latest purchase order number is right there, right? If you want to print another purchase order, you can use the search criteria to select for purchase orders. And in order to print it, the first thing you have to do is execute this transaction. So it's going to validate certain things and pull out your purchase orders. For example, if you want to print like 10 purchase orders, you could use this transaction to enter 10 purchase order numbers. We don't need to know how to do it now, But that's the reason why the screen is a little more elaborate than you might have thought. Now, once you enter a purchase order number, click on this button. Whenever you see this button that has a check mark and a clockwork kind of a icon, that's always execute. The system pulls up the purchase order, select it, and then click on output message. Right? If you hit the green check mark, that means the system would have automatically created a PDF for the purchase order and issued it to the printer. And which printer does it go to? This printer, LP01. Now, the printer LP01 is configured with a certain HP or Canon printer that's configured out there somewhere. And right here, you can also do a print preview, like click on display message by clicking on the purchase order, and you can view how the PDF is going to look like. Alright, so that's how you print the PO. Right? You select your purchase order number, one or more, and then hit the execute button. And if there are more in the list, you select whatever you want to print and click on the output message. Right? So we have printed a PO and then maybe dispatched that to the vendor via mail or FedEx or some kind of thing. All right. Now let's try and answer these questions. The first question being, give some examples of the search criteria to select vendor during PO creation. So let's go and try and create a purchase order again. So go to logistics, material management, purchasing, purchase order, and then create. And when you hit that create button, you'll be taken to the previous purchase order screen, meaning the purchase order that you have previously created. And when you click on this button, that's when you're asking the system to create another purchase order. So click on this button and then it opens up a blank screen for you. Go there and select your vendor. So what are the search criteria we have? We can search by city, which we have done previously, Chicago. We can search by name. We can search by postal code. And we can also search by country. So you can go and put in US, Canada, Mexico. You know, for a multinational company, the vendor could truly be anywhere. And then you could search by, let's see, what are the other search criteria we have? We could also search by address. Right? So these are all the search criteria that we have. Right? So let's go and answer that question. So give some examples of the search criteria to select vendor during PO creation. The answer for that is you have city, which we have used already. We have zip code. We have name. We have vendor number, so on and so forth. Second question, what is the org data that's entered in the PO header? Now we've entered 3 pieces of data in the header. Let me close this and select a previously selected vendor. Now, how did I get this drop down? What I've done is I have hit the backspace on the keyboard. Place your cursor on a field and then hit the backspace. When you hit the backspace, the system pulls down the list of previously entered values for that field. In this case, I've entered these list of vendors. So I've select 1222, which is the latest vendor. And then the question here is, what is the data that we have entered in the org data? So this thing that you see here is called org data. You don't see the data word here, but it's org data. So we have entered 3 fields here: purchase org, purchase group, company code. So purchase org, purchase group, company code. Don't worry if you don't understand these things. We're going to learn about this in the next set of chapters. The third question is, can you enter a zero quantity at the line item level? Let's see. So let's enter some purchase org. And then again, I have entered the material for flower here, right? So how do I pull it? I do a backspace on my keyboard, and then it lists a whole bunch of materials. I select BP401 because that's the one that I've entered, and over here let me put a quantity of 0, okay, and hit OK. And then it says enter plant. So where is our plant? Remember, you have to scroll to the right. Same thing here. Do a backspace, select 3100, and it says enter a quantity. That means that it does not allow a quantity of 0. That means that you always have to enter an order quantity. Alright, what's the next question? So, can you enter a 0 quantity? The answer is no. What is the material number for hard wheat flour? Let's go search. So instead of this material BP401, we're going to search for hard wheat flour. Star flour, hit enter, and then this is hard wheat flour. So it's CP-FD1105. Now, it doesn't matter what that material number is. The reason why we have that question is so that you can practice some things on an SAP practice system. Okay, what is the error message you receive when you enter hard wheat flour for plant 3100? Alright, let's see that. So enter, right, and then we want to enter a quantity of say 100. For which plant? 3100. 3100. Click OK. It says material not maintained for plant. We will look at more details on this error message a bit later, but for now just understand that you cannot enter any material for any plant. Think of this scenario: not all materials are created or manufactured in all plants, right? Some plants manufacture some materials, or some plants store some materials, while other plants store other kinds of materials. It also depends on the facilities available at that plant. Alright, let's move on. So use plant 3200 for this material and enter a price of $2 per pound. So instead of 3100, the question asks us to enter 3200 and then enter some price, right? It gives you a warning. Order quantity violates rounding rules. There is something called as a rounding rule. Let's not get into that. And you just hit enter and that warning is gone. But it still shows you that there are warnings for that line item. You can always click this and see what are the warning messages for that line item. If you want to see the overall messages, you can hit this button, right? So use plan for 3200, the PO goes through.